Oh boy. Oh boy, I'm fired up this show. I'm really fired up. I hope I'm not going to come across as lecturing or preachy or as a know-it-all in this episode. But man, I'm fired up. I'm just a concerned citizen. I'm just a concerned U.S. citizen. I try to do this show in a fair way. I calls them as I sees them. If you listen regularly, you've heard me say it before. I'm not a pundit. I'm not an expert. I'm not a guy who's ever been in politics, ever been on the radio, ever done any kind of broadcasting. I clean toilets for a living. That's the truth. I clean toilets, I have my headphones on, and I listen. And I wonder, why can't anyone just give an honest opinion? So that's what you're about to get. You're about to get my honest opinion. And when I say honest opinion, that's exactly what I mean. I'm not talking about facts. I'll try and find facts. I'm not talking about even an unbiased viewpoint. I recognize the media is going to be biased. That's just the way the media is today. I'm not even talking about that. I'm just talking about an honest opinion on things. We can't even get that anymore. Even if it's a wrong opinion, I'll take a wrong opinion over a dishonest opinion. Why can't anyone ever think past the breaking news of the day? Why can't we ever remember back to just the breaking news of today? Oh, this is what's happening right now, this moment. I know why. It's because everyone is trying to win that particular news cycle. Politicians want to win the public opinion in that news cycle. Media outlets want to win the ratings battle in that news cycle. Hosts of radio shows, hosts of TV shows want you to keep watching to the next commercial break, and then the next one, and then the next one. So every segment is breaking news. Breaking news to make you outraged, breaking news to make you sad, breaking news to make you afraid. Whatever emotion will pull you into the next news segment. And of course, the internet, websites, the Wild West where anything goes. Any maniac with a keyboard in 10 seconds can start a conspiracy. This is what we're dealing with. So I say all that, and I ask these questions so that I can ask you with the utmost humbleness, the utmost understanding that I know it's easy for me to criticize from where I am. I know it's easy to sit back and criticize. But I asked you, what the heck is wrong with Biden? And, wait, before you turn me off, because you're saying, oh, I thought this guy was supposed to be unbiased. Why does he get ready to criticize Biden? Stay tuned. Just wait till I get to Trump and Fox News later on in the show. Don't worry. Don't worry. But what the heck is wrong with Joe Biden? Why does Biden insist on being frustratingly cryptic sometimes and then give away our whole game plan other times? Just listen to this clip from MSNBC. No, excuse me, not MSNBC. Listen to this clip from NBC.
President Biden tonight delivering this blunt warning to Vladimir Putin.
Russia would pay a severe price if they use chemical weapons.
At a heated UN Security Council meeting, Russia accused the U.S. and Ukraine of preparing to use chemical and biological weapons. What the U.S. is blasting as lies, a false Russian pretext to justify a potential chemical attack.
I will say this once. Ukraine does not have a biological weapons program.
It comes as the president is trying to further squeeze the Russian economy, saying the U.S. would join allies in ending normal trade relations with Moscow. President Biden's new sanctions also ban several Russian imports, including caviar, vodka, and diamonds. Though Putin today, hosting Belarus's president, brushed off the escalating sanctions, saying the Soviet Union constantly lived with them.
The idea that we're going to send in offensive equipment and have planes and tanks and trains, that's called World War III.
So set aside your anger for just a moment that you can't get your caviar, vodka, or diamonds anymore from Russia. Let's just set that aside for a minute. I had a delivery of caviar supposed to be coming in next week. But there goes Joe Biden whispering into the microphone again, that's World War III. No, it's not. No, it's not, Joe. That's not World War III. Why do you keep saying that? Why do you keep telling everyone that? But why do you also insist on being so cryptic? Oh, Vladimir Putin will pay a severe price. Vladimir Putin better not use chemical weapons or else. Or else what? What does that mean? What does that mean? If you're so worried about World War III, why are you telling the world that Vladimir Putin is going to pay a severe price for using chemical weapons? Why would that be any different? And why would that potentially lead to World War III? Why are we so caught up on this World War III thing? It's not World War III. It's Russia against the largest, most powerful countries in the world. The UK, Canada, Germany, Poland. Sure, I'll even throw France in there. And who's on Russia's side? China? I don't think so. The leader of China is ambitious, but he ain't crazy. He has ambitions, but he's smart enough to recognize who the losing side would be in a fight between the world and Russia and China. So who? Syria? Oh, no, not Syria. North Korea? Iran? Who fights with Russia in World War III, Joe Biden? So no, it's not World War III. Stop telling people that. It's a nuclear-armed Russia against the rest of the world. That's the concern. That's the worry. So say that. It's a country that has nuclear weapons against the rest of the world. So that we can't have. We cannot have an escalation that risks putting the world in a nuclear catastrophe, right? Right. That makes sense. All right. I get it. So then why do you keep saying this, Joe Biden?
In addition to the economic penalties we're imposing, we're also taking steps to defend our NATO allies, particularly in the East. Our forces are not and will not be engaged in the conflict with Russia in Ukraine. Our forces are not going to Europe to fight in Ukraine, but to defend our NATO allies and reassure those allies in the East. As I made crystal clear, the United States will defend every inch of NATO territory with the full force of American power.
So that's World War III. An attack on one is an attack on all. Well, Joe, you can't on one hand be so defiantly assertive that we don't want to put U.S. troops in conflict with Russian troops because that will lead to World War III, while at the same time saying, well, but unless they cross into an inch of NATO territory. Doesn't make any sense. So you're open to the possibility of World War III, as you see it, if Russia crosses just 1 inch into Poland or another NATO country. So when it comes to Ukraine, no troops, no fly zone, no MiG jets from Poland. Nope, sorry, can't help you. Because we don't want to upset Mr. Putin. We don't want to escalate. Unless, of course, he tries to cross into NATO territory. That would upset Putin. If the U.S. attacks Russian soldiers because they cross into NATO territory, that's going to upset Vladimir Putin. That's going to escalate. So why are you waiting for him to do it? Why are you waiting for Putin to do what you know he wants to do? To respond? Why? Why are you allowing him to kill people and take a country to avoid escalation when you know that escalation is coming? You know it's coming. You know he wants to escalate. You know he wants to call your bluff. You know he sees it as a bluff. Why? Because you've been so adamant that we don't want to get into any conflict with Russia. That's World War III. Maybe, just maybe, Joe Biden, you should call Putin's bluff. Stop letting him control the narrative. Oh, it might be World War III, and you control the narrative. And you say, you know what? It's going to be World War III if he messes around with us. How about that, Joe? How about embracing World War III? Because it's not going to be World War III. It's going to be the world against Putin. It's going to be the world against Putin, not World War III. A war that Russia cannot win. The problem is the nuclear weapons. That is also a war that Russia cannot win. Let me say that again. A nuclear war is also a war that Russia can't win. Now, it's a war that no one can win. Everyone will lose in. I can see that. But it's also a war that Russia and Putin can't win. It's time to start explaining to Vladimir Putin there is no good ending to this story for you. There is no good outcome. Escalation, non-escalation, no matter what happens, No matter if you take Ukraine, if you don't take Ukraine, if you escalate further, there is no positive outcome. Right now, Vladimir Putin does not understand that. He sees a positive outcome because you're giving him a positive outcome. You're telling him you can have Ukraine, but nothing else. No more than that. No, you can have Ukraine. Sorry, Ukraine. You're not part of the club. Sorry. We know you wanted to be part of the club. We know you've been trying to be part of the club, but sorry. Too many people were trying to be too buddy-buddy with Mr. Putin over the last 20 years. That's why I'm so fired up. That's why I'm so angry. I know there's no easy answer to this. I know I don't have the answer, but that's why I'm so angry over the attitude of Joe Biden and Europe. Listen to this clip. And this is a long clip, and I cut it down quite a bit, and it's still a long clip, but it's important. It's important to hear. This clip I'm about to play for you very well may be the most important clip played on media since this whole invasion began. With all the breaking news stories, with all the stories about what's going on, Ukraine fighting back, Putin being stymied, Putin being stalled, the heroic actions of Zelensky, with all of that being reported, this very well may be the most important clip that's been played in the last 2 weeks. Listen to it.
The tragedy and Russian military barbarism unfolding before our eyes in Ukraine is horrifying, and the road to it was partly paved with 2 decades of misplaced optimism, appeasement, and Western leaders too eager to look the other way when it came to Vladimir Putin. While born from no doubt a well-intentioned desire to welcome Russia into the global community, that desire seemed to often block out the obvious warning signs. One of Putin's first actions as president in early 2000 was to level the Chechen capital city of Grozny. So much so that the UN was reportedly still calling it the most destroyed city on earth years later. Thousands of civilians were killed. And how did the U.S. respond? With stern warnings and a friendly presidential summit.
I think that the United States can do business with this man. What I have seen of him so far indicates to me that he's capable of being a very strong and effective and straightforward leader.
President Clinton was the first American leader to see a potential partner in Putin, but he was far from the last.
I looked the man in the eye. I found him to be very straightforward and trustworthy. I was able to get a sense of his soul.
The UK responded to a brazen assassination on its soil by expelling 4 Russian diplomats. That's it. In 2008, Putin, emboldened, invaded neighboring Georgia using the pretense of protecting the rights of Russian-speaking separatists, which is now his playbook.
Russia has invaded a sovereign neighboring state and threatens a democratic government elected by its people. Such an action is unacceptable in the 21st century.
Unacceptable. So how did President Bush punish Putin for this bloody invasion of a sovereign nation? Nothing. Not even economic sanctions. Something former Bush National Security Advisor Stephen Hadley told me 6 years later was a mistake. So willing to work with Putin, often despite NATO's fears. Remember the 2012 Obama hot mic moment with Putin's short-term successor, Dmitry Medvedev, about Putin's objections to U.S. missile defense systems protecting NATO allies? Obama's opponent that election insisted that Russia was the U.S.'s #1 geopolitical foe, and Obama mocked him.
The 1980s are now calling to ask for their foreign policy back.
Obama's flexibility was indeed transmitted to Vladimir, and 2 years later, Putin ordered the annexation of Crimea and started a civil war in eastern Ukraine, providing arms to separatists who, in July 2014, used a Russian missile system to shoot down Malaysian Airlines Flight 17, killing 298 innocent people. The world responded to the annexation of Crimea and that downed passenger plane in 2014 with some relatively weak sanctions and by kicking Russia out of the G8. Syria came next, with Putin siding with genocidal maniac Bashar al-Assad, Russian jets using cluster bombs to attack hospitals to kill civilians. In many ways, seemingly a dry run for what we're seeing now in Ukraine. And again, no serious action from the West in response. Bolder still, never deterred, Putin ordered the 2016 interference campaign in the U.S. election. This was followed by some more sanctions and expelled Russian diplomats, but still nothing really with teeth, nothing truly punishing. It was an interference campaign that came amidst a candidate who not only admired Putin, but openly called for his election help.
Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing.
A president who his own aides feared would withdraw the U.S. from NATO, who saw moral equivalence between the United States and Russia.
Putin's a killer. You think our country's so innocent?
A man who sided with Putin over his own U.S. intelligence community about the 2016 election interference campaign.
My people came to me, Dan Coates came to me, and some others. They said they think it's Russia. I have President Putin. He just said it's not Russia. I will say this, I don't see any reason why it would be.
I mean, honestly, if you were Putin, would you think there were any real limits to what you could get away with? I mean, it's easy to see why he thought this time would be no different.
Throughout our history, we've learned this lesson. When dictators do not pay a price for their aggression, they cause more chaos.
President Biden is right. Dictators who do not pay a price for aggression continue causing more chaos. But may I ask, have we actually learned that lesson?
He poisons people. He assassinates people. He drops cluster bombs on civilians. He shoots down airplanes. He invades sovereign countries and doesn't even have the decency to make up a new lie, just uses the same old lie, I'm going in to protect Russian-speaking separatists. Used the same lie in Ukraine that he used in Georgia years earlier. And yet 20 years of appeasement. Jake Tapper didn't even hardly get into the European appeasement. He stuck with just the appeasement from American presidents, both Democratic and Republican. He didn't even get into Europe, bending over for Putin in the last 20 years. And for 1 year, the whole world just sat and watched Russia amass troops around another country, preparing for an invasion. For a year, they prepared for an invasion, amassed tens of thousands of troops, over 100,000 vehicles, tanks, weapons. For a year, we sat and watched. And when the invasion finally started, what did the U.S. do? When questioned about, well, were you caught off guard by this invasion? I mean, that was in the making for a year. The response from the Biden administration was, oh, no, we saw it all along. We told you, our intelligence, we knew exactly what Putin was going to do. Almost as if they're patting themselves on the back for knowing exactly every step that Putin was going to take in the invasion while they sat and did nothing. It was almost as if they were patting themselves on the back for that. And I'm supposed to believe Joe Biden when he says we're going to defend every inch of NATO territory? Vladimir Putin is supposed to believe Joe Biden when he says we're going to defend every inch of NATO territory? After what you just heard for the last 20 years? After what Putin's been allowed to get away with for the last 20 years? We're supposed to believe Joe Biden when he says, oh, these sanctions are going to be the toughest ever. Oh, if he uses chemical weapons, he's going to pay a heavy price for that. Joe, it might be time to realize we may not get out of this situation without escalation. You keep trying to avoid escalation. Escalation may not be avoidable. Don't be crazy, comparison group guy. What are you calling for? A nuclear war? No, not at all. What I'm telling you, what I'm giving you my honest opinion on is it may be time to admit without escalation, Vladimir Putin is going to be allowed to put the Soviet Union back together again. It may just be time for all of us to admit that. If we're so afraid of escalation, let's just admit, let's just stop the pretense and admit Vladimir Putin has outwitted us and he's going to put the Soviet Union back together again, and there's nothing we can do to stop him. Nothing we can do to stop him. Because if we're not going to defend the non-NATO countries that were former Soviet states, if we're not going to defend them militarily, if we're not going to punish Putin harshly enough, as I said in the last show, with permanent punishment, not temporary punishment, but permanent punishment, isolating him from the rest of the world forever if he continues his behavior. If we're not going to do that, it's time to admit Vladimir Putin is going to put the old Soviet Union back together again. You've got a better outcome to this? I'm all ears. I'm all ears. You tell me what outcome you see based on what you just heard. Based on what you just heard over the last 20 years. You tell me what better outcome you see. If the greatest military in the history of the world is told to sit and wait, and let's see what he does. Let's see what he does. Just sit and wait. If the United States military is told to just sit and wait, you tell me what obstacles Putin faces. And if you say it's the caviar, vodka, and diamonds, I'm going to tell you you're just as crazy as Biden. So no, we'll sit and we'll watch on our TVs as Ukrainians continue to be pulled from the rubble, as the Russians continue to bomb hospitals and residential neighborhoods. And I will concede, I heard someone on a show, left-leaning show, say it's easy to want Biden to do more, to want NATO to do more, because you see the consequences of us not doing anything. When you can see the consequences of us not doing enough, it's easy to say we need to do more. But if we do more, well, what are the consequences of that going to be? So I can see that. Yes, we don't know what an escalation looks like. I get it. I don't have the answer. I don't say that I do. But neither does Joe Biden. That's for sure. Neither does the Biden administration. Neither do the Republicans. And maybe, and just maybe, because no one has the answer to how to handle this situation, we in America, we do what we do. We occupy ourselves with other fights. Fights over gas prices and inflation. While the people of Ukraine are fighting for their lives and for their freedom, we're here fighting over who's to blame for gas prices and inflation. The Biden administration wants to deflect the blame onto Russia. The GOP wants to put all the blame on Joe Biden. Way to come together, America. Way to show Putin how united and strong we are. Way not to use this opportunity to flood the airwaves with misinformation. Way not to help Putin once again by spreading lies that are surely coming from Russia. Spreading lies that are surely coming out of Russia. I told you I was going to flip it around. I got two clips for you now. The first clip is called Fact Check Fox's Tucker Carlson Caught Amplifying Kremlin Claims. The other clip is Kremlin Memo Names Tucker Carlson as Essential to Its Propaganda Strategy. Memo names Tucker Carlson as essential to his propaganda strategy. I should play that one first. I'll play the other one. Play the other clip. Here, listen.
Turning to another important facet of this war, the information war, and what U.S. officials deride as Kremlin disinformation, which matters in the global stage. It matters over in the European theater, but it also matters right here at home because some of it is being echoed on Fox News. Russia called a UN Security Council meeting today to renew its allegations that it says the U.S. might be somehow funding bioweapons in Ukraine. The theory here is it could involve the later use of chemical weapons by Russia that it would then seek to blame on others. Meanwhile, the Times reports that some right-wing voices are amplifying these Kremlin accusations and conspiracies, including Tucker Carlson, who keeps casting doubt on the U.S. denials and has distorted at least one Pentagon official's words. In a recent interview, this official said Ukraine labs could not manufacture bioweapons, then saying in the Soviet era, a while back, they may have previously had that ability, but, quote, there's no place that still has any of the sort of infrastructure for researching or producing biological weapons. Pause. Take that in. No place for it. And then Tucker Carlson deliberately excises that and then suggests Pope somehow asserted the exact opposite.
Because as Pope put it, scientists are scientists. They don't want to destroy all the bioweapons. Instead, they're using them to conduct new bioweapons research. That's what he said.
That's not what he said. Pope said the opposite. And while it's perfectly fine for anyone, citizen or journalist, to be skeptical of things you hear from the U.S. government, being skeptical, maybe not taking denials at face value, is different from being in the media and misconstruing and falsely asserting what the U.S. says.
Let me make sure you understand what's going on here. Russia shows up to a UN Security Council meeting and makes up a story that Ukraine has biological weapons. And oh, by the way, they're being funded by the U.S. Now, I hear this not just on Fox News. No, I hear it on a conservative podcast that I listen to. Oh, busted. This is what the guy said. U.S. is busted. They lied about it. Turns out, they have been funding biological weapons labs in Ukraine. And it's not true. It's not true. There's a woman on Hannity's show telling him, no, it's not true. There's no secret here. The Pentagon has worked with Ukraine on these labs for years. They're old Soviet-era labs. No secret. Nothing being hidden. Nothing uncovered here by Russia. But Fox News, they run with it. Conservative media, they run with it. What in the Sam Hill is going on? When a Russian shows up to the UN and makes up a story about the U.S., and an American media channel amplifies the lie to the point to where Russia is playing the lie from the American journalist on their state TV, what the Sam Hill is going on?
Democrats in Washington have told you have a patriotic duty to hate Vladimir Putin. It's not a suggestion, it's a mandate. Because the target is Russia, very few Americans have noticed any of this. They support it. The point here is to defend democracy. Not that Ukraine is a democracy, it is not a democracy. It might be worth asking yourself, since it is getting pretty serious, what is this really about? Why do I hate Putin so much? Has Putin ever called me a racist?
The most watched host on the most watched network, supposedly the most trusted network, fair and balanced, is once again a useful idiot for Russia. Oh, wait, this just in. I'm being told I'm wrong. Tucker Carlson is not a useful idiot.
These people are not useful idiots. They are beyond useful idiots. Useful idiots don't know, as a term of art in the intelligence world. They don't really know what they're doing. They're just stupid. These people are almost collaborators to a certain extent. They do know what they're doing. I would call them an asset, especially Tucker Carlson. And Tulsi Gabbard, she's just a moron.
So there's a intelligence expert, a U.S. intelligence expert telling you, I know a useful idiot when I see one. They're not even useful idiots. That would be a compliment. They're stupid. They're collaborators. They're assets. They're assets for Russia to use. What in the Sam Hill is going on here? When the highest rated host in cable news is too stupid to be considered an idiot. I told you, I calls them as I sees them. I played the clips of past presidents, Republican and Democrats, appeasing Putin. But here is a former member of our intelligence community telling all of us, telling the people who watch Tucker Carlson because they love America and they love freedom, he's a collaborator with Vladimir Putin. For what? For what, Tucker? For what, Fox News? So you can run more catheter commercials? And you love this country? You love our men and women in the military? Oh, but the second someone hits that trigger word, mandate, oh, the second someone says mandate, oh, Democrats, they mandate that you hate Vladimir Putin. Why do we have to hate Vladimir Putin? And these people, they sit there. I think for myself. I'm an independent thinker. I'm not a sheep. I watch Tucker Carlson because I'm not a sheep. You're siding with Russia over America, and you have been ever since Donald Trump told you to. I don't know how much more of a sheep you can be. Scratch that. Even before Trump, even before Fox News started with the, why can't we have a strong president like Putin instead of this weak girly man Obama? Putin, he rides a horse with no shirt, and Obama, he wears mom jeans. We can go way back to then. People showed up to Trump rallies wearing shirts that said, I'd rather be Russian than a Democrat. We can go way back to then. But then, the ultimate selling of your soul. The ultimate selling of your soul. A decorated member of our military. And anyone that serves in our military is a hero. You don't have to be decorated. You don't have to get medals for bravery and for being injured. But this guy just happened to get medals for bravery and being injured. Colonel Vindman, Colonel Vindman, he showed up and under oath, he told members of Congress, you are helping Vladimir Putin. You are spreading his lies. You are jeopardizing the security of this country. And he immediately became the enemy of conservative media, the enemy of conservative politicians, the enemy of a president who saw to it that Colonel Vindman, along with others, lost their jobs, quote unquote, reassigned. All because they tried to warn us. They tried to warn the American people. You're siding with Russia. You're spreading Russian lies. And by the way, nothing they told us, nothing that Colonel Vindman tried to tell us has been disproven to this day. If anything, we have a clearer picture of what Russia did, of how they spread their lies, as how they spread their misinformation on social media, how our own media amplified the Russian lies. We have a clearer picture of it today. It hasn't been disproven, but yet he became the enemy, Colonel Vindman, not Putin, and remains so. Vindman remains the enemy, and the guy who put bounties on the heads of American soldiers is the guy that Tucker Carlson and others in right-wing media want to amplify. What in the Sam Hill is going on? For what? For what? You love Donald Trump that much?
This is a tough hurricane, one of the wettest we've ever seen from the standpoint of water.
It's tremendously big and tremendously wet.
Listen, it might just be time to admit that following a guy that appears to have just discovered that water is wet is not a good idea. You know, former Attorney General under Trump, Bill Barr, has just written a book. And like so many former Trump officials, he wants to tell us all now about Donald Trump's many flaws. Didn't tell us when he was Attorney General. He was another enabler. But he wants to tell us now how unhinged, how stubborn, about Donald Trump's poor temperament, how he was not willing to listen to reason. He wants to tell us all that. And he uses the same excuse. Well, I agree with his policies. Oh, yeah, the Trump behavior, sometimes, yeah, he was a little nuts. But I agreed with his policies. Same excuse for every Republican caught up in the Trump circus. I agree with his policies. First of all, Donald Trump has no policies. When you think of Donald Trump, you don't picture him sitting in the Oval Office with advisors all around him cranking out policy. His policy was whatever they told him was the Republican policy that day. Republicans are for criminal justice reform. Since when? We're for no limits on pre-existing conditions, no lifetime limits, kids stay on their parents' insurance policies, you know, Obamacare. We're for that. Since when? We're for better relationships with Vladimir Putin and Russia. Since when? Since when was that the Republican policy? Better relationship with Russia. Not since John McCain. Not since Mitt Romney. Not since you mocked Hillary Clinton for the reset button. Not since you crucified Barack Obama for the open mic moment. No, only since Donald Trump and Tucker Carlson told you to be. There's a word for that. Sheeple. You know, Fox News viewers, independent thinkers, free thinkers. It's the word you call everyone else. Sheeple. Another fantastic show by me. Successfully offending everybody. Come on now. I hit Biden hard. Hit Trump hard. Hitting everybody in this show. I calls them as I sees them. I'll criticize where I think I need to criticize. I'll compliment where I think I need to be complimenting. But man, I see a lot of reason for criticism nowadays. Thanks for listening. I sure do appreciate it. This show is designed to offend everyone equally. Now, of course, it makes it much harder to get listeners that way. I may have to rethink this strategy and just pick a side. Well. While I figure it out, visit the website for sources of info and fact checks. Visit me on Instagram. I gotta remember to mention Instagram. You can leave comments there for me. Just like direct message comments right there on Instagram. Tell me what a wonderful job I'm doing. Subscribe to the show on all the major podcast platforms: Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts. And of course, follow me on Twitter @comparison_show. I hate Twitter. I really do. I really hate Twitter. Not because of messages, negative messages. I get very few negative messages, believe it or not, because I have, I guess, very few people paying attention to me, maybe. I don't know. But I just hate Twitter because if you don't have a gazillion followers, people just assume, not going to pay any attention to this guy. He doesn't have any followers. But what if I'm making sense? What's the use? Thanks for all the great support. I'll see you next time.